In the courtyard there was a fire, and Simon Peter sat down among those there to warm himself. A servant girl recognised him and said,
"This man was with Jesus."
But Simon Peter denied it, saying,
"Woman, I do not know him."
Shortly afterwards, someone else spotted Simon Peter and said,
"This man was certainly with Jesus. Why, he is from Galilee, like Jesus."
But Simon Peter replied,
"I am not, my friend."
And then, about half an hour later, another insisted.
"You are one of those who follow Jesus."
Peter said,
"My friend, you are mistaken. I don't know what you are speaking about."
And while Simon Peter was still talking, the cock crowed, and Jesus looked straight at Simon Peter. And he remembered that Jesus had predicted this. Simon Peter left the courtyard and wept bitterly. Meanwhile, the men who guarded Jesus were mocking him and beating him. They blindfolded and ridiculed him. When they broke, Jesus was brought to the chief priests and scribes.
"If you are the Christ, tell us."
Jesus replied,
"I told you the truth. You wouldn't believe me. If I asked you what you meant, you wouldn't answer me. So what I will say is this. From now on, the Son of Man takes his place at God's right hand, the place of power."
They then said,
"So you are the Son of God then?"
He answered,
"It is you who say I am."
So they brought him before Pilate.
"We found this man undermining our law and order, forbidding payment of taxes and claiming he is the Messiah King."
Pontius Pilate put this question to Jesus.
"Are you the King of the Jews?"
Jesus replied.
"It is you who says this."
Pilate then said to the chief priests and crowds,
"I can find no case against this man."
but the crowd persisted.
"He is inflaming the people with his teaching all over the country, all the way from his hometown Galilee."
When Pilate heard that Jesus was a Galilean, he realised that it was up to Herod to decide his fate, as Galilee was under Herod's control. Herod was delighted to meet Jesus, as he had heard about him and had been wanting to see him for a long time. He was particularly hoping to see a miracle worked by Jesus. Herod questioned. He questioned Jesus, but didn't get any reply. The chief priests and scribes were getting more heated and kept accusing Jesus. In the end, Herod got nowhere and mocked Jesus by putting a rich cloak on him and sent him back to Pilate. Herod and Pilate had been enemies to this point, but reconciled that day. Pilate summoned to the chief priests and said,
"You brought this man to me as a disturber of the peace. Neither Herod nor I can find anything to back up your charges. He has done nothing to deserve this punishment. So I have flogged him, and now I will let him go."
But the crowd shouted as one,
"Away with him! Give
Barabbas! Barabbas was a notorious criminal who had been in prison for starting a riot and for murder. Pilate was anxious to let Jesus go free and address them again, but the crowd shouted,
Crucify him!
The third time Pilate appealed to the crowd.
Why? For what crime? I find no charge against him that deserves death. I have punished him, and I will let him go.
But the crowd persisted, shouting at the top of their voices, and the cries were only growing louder.
Crucify him! Crucify him!
The crowd grew louder, and Pilate gave his verdict. The crowd's demands were to be granted. Barabbas released, and Jesus handed over to the Romans. They seized a man, Simon, who was from Cyrene. He was travelling in from the countryside, and they made him take the cross and carry it behind Jesus. Large numbers of people followed, women too, and they mourned and cried for him. But Jesus turned to them and said,
Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. If this is what they do to live green tree, imagine what they will do with dead wood.
With him, they also led out 2 other criminals to the execution, towards Golgotha, the place known as the Skull.
There is a green hill far away outside a city wall, where the dear Lord was crucified, who died to save us all. We may not know, we cannot tell what pains he had to bear, but we believe it was for us he hung and suffered there. He died that we